Today, we're going to be discussing the Speed King and how to do a little maintenance on it so you can get yours back up and going. All right, guys and ladies. So today we're going to be going over some brief history on these pedals. We're going to be going over some little maintenance things that you can do to bring your pedal back to life. We won't be taking one completely apart, but we'll be close to taking most of it apart. And then I'll give you some little hacks that you can do in order to find parts and have to pay through the teeth for them. A lot of them you'll see have the WFL right there, stamp, or casting, I should say, not stamp. And then as you go on, you'll see that some of them, then at some point they switched over to the Ludwig right there. Okay, when these were first made in 1938, it was at about the time when Mr. Ludwig sold the company. And when he sold the company, obviously he sold the name, which is why, you know, when they introduced the pedal, it had the WFL stamp, Willem F. Ludwig, instead of it saying Ludwig. Plain and simple, he couldn't use his name. He sold it. He tried using it, and the company that he sold it to immediately sent them a cease and desist because he didn't know his name, hence WFL. These pedals stayed pretty much the same. There were some light changes here and there, but for the most part, they stayed the same all the way through the 90s. At some point, they did widen these stanchions a little bit, and they obviously went from it saying WFL to Ludwig. Just know that just because your pedal says WFL doesn't mean it's a WFL era pedal. In order for it to be a WFL era pedal, it's got to have two things, okay, that are easily visible. One, it'll say WFL on the platform there, okay? And then number two, if you look at over here on the side, it'll say WFL on the little cover there. Okay, and obviously there's two covers, one on either side. They both will say WFL. If it doesn't, then it'll say Ludwig, like it does on these. Okay, you can barely read them because they're a little, cruddy, but it'll say Ludwig. It'll say the same thing, Ludwig instead of WFL, drum company, Chicago, USA. That's how you know at first sight that it's truly a WFL era pedal and not a Ludwig WFL pedal. And the simple reason is this, all right? And anyone who plays these or plays anything having to do with Ludwig knows all about this. You know, Mr. Ludwig, being very smart and efficient with the way he spent his money, he would rather use up his old stock than having to just, put it out to the side or throw it away and then reintroduce new things. Hence the WFL stamp there, and then the WFL like grease caps there. In 1957 is when they switched over to the Ludwig caps over here, and they were stamped WFL on the pedal all the way through 1967, 68, and around that time frame is when they introduced the foot pedal that had the Ludwig stamp on it. All the parts are pretty much interchangeable. I've never ran into any of these pedals where I couldn't interchange parts. I'm sure there's somebody that's out there that can argue to that, but like I said, I personally have not. If you want to replace any of these parts, I'm gonna give you kind of like some quick ideas of what you can do. For example, like the stands. If those stands, like hi-hat stand, cymbal stands, if those stands aren't any good, cannibalize them for the parts. The parts being all these little screws that have the handles on them are the same ones that are on the cymbal stands, and then just keep these so that I can use them when I need them. So that's hack number one, guys. If you're going to use them, once again, another little hack, I took some felt, as you can see this red felt there, and I glued them on there, and I use that so that it doesn't ruin my bass drum. Okay, so that's hack number two. If you play vintage drums, I'm sure you've come to notice that a lot of the times newer pedals like a DW5000, they won't fit between the lugs or the T-rods on the bottom of the bass drum. I recommend doing two things. One, removing those two T-rods at the bottom and replacing them with just modern style modern style tension rods, and then using these vintage ones, and then they'll slide in because obviously that's what they were designed for. Any of the newer ones won't fit because the footboard is just too wide. A lot of the newer models of pedals are going away from the chain and going to what they call like a direct drive, right? Because it's instead of a chain, it uses a metal link. Well, you know, Ludwig has been doing that for a very, very long time right there, right? As you can see, right? You can find this replacement at Drum Factory Direct. They're like $12 or $13. It is thicker. They work great, and you can easily put them on yourself. They come with all the parts necessary to set up that linkage, and it works amazingly well. It's super simple. I don't have to worry about anybody stealing it for gigs. You know, I could take it places. It weighs nothing. I can throw it in my bag that I carry all my hardware, and then I just, you know, set it up. I use it. It works great every time because it's a direct drive. It does an amazing job for me, and it keeps that vintage style, that vintage look, okay? Before I use them, I obviously do maintenance on them. I'm not going to take the dust covers off of here, but I'll walk you through how to remove them. You're going to need either a heat gun or a large torch, you know, like the ones that you get at the Homes Depot that has the propane bottle with the torch attachment to it. That's what I recommend. You put the heat to this, put for a few seconds, and then you just hit it with a hammer softly, and this thing will pop right off. Once it's popped right off, it'll expose the little cam that lives inside of here. Okay, that little cam, all right, that lives inside of here is what allows for this to go up and down. Picture a valve on your car. If you're into cars, right? The valve's job is to go up and down, and what drives it going up and down is going to be your cam. Okay, so as this thing goes up and down, that cam, which is inside of here, turns, right? And that little lobe, it rests on this. It goes up and down. It goes up and down. And then the spring, which is this one, obviously this is all, I've done the maintenance on these already, so that's why they're all greased up. This slides in here like that. And as it's traveling up and down, the spring is what causes the pedal to pop back up again. So they're super simple, very easy. You put them in here. I'll show you. They unscrew the bottom, right? You put it in here like so, right? It falls in. Make sure you line it up correctly. When you're taking this stuff apart, make sure you're super careful to make sure you put everything right back. This is your tension. This right here, guys, is what sets your tension. You thread it in, and there's two of them, okay? One on the left, one on the right. When you thread it in, make sure that you give them all the same amount of turns, meaning 3, 3.5, 5, however many turns you do. That way you're setting the tension equally on both sides. So you put it in after you've greased it. I use the same grease that I use for all my drums, right? It's in the same, and boom, so now it works. The cams are broken on this one, so that's why you hear that click. Otherwise, it would be nice and smooth. It's a lot cheaper to just buy maybe 2 of these. You can find them. There's people out there that are asking $75, $80, $100, even more for these old vintage ones. They're not worth that, man. I'm telling you that right now. They're not worth it. If you just hold off, you can buy one for like $25, $30. Once again, cannibalize the parts that you can off of that. That way, maybe you can take 2 of them and build one that works. One of the other things that I did do that I thought I'd show you. So these pedals were known as the Squeak Kings because when they go up and down, they would squeak like crazy at this joint right here. Okay, at this joint that you can see. So when I drilled it out, okay, so as you can see this right here, that's the original setup, right? So what I did, I took the grinder to it and I just ground the heads of these off. Once these came off, I took the pedal and this baseboard and I took it to Ace Hardware. And what I did was I found the rod and then I found bushings that would fit the rod. What I did was I just drilled out the footboard and this with a little bit larger drill bit until my bushings fit. I took this pin and I just ground the sides down. As you can see, it looks very homemade because it is, right? I cut it down to the length that I needed. I ground the sides so it would slide in. And guys, believe me, it's super easy. It's a lot easier than you think it is. All right? So it slides in. It doesn't squeak anymore. And then I found these cool little pins, right? I don't even know what these things are called, right? That fit right over the top. And then they tighten with an Allen wrench. And there you go. I have a updated pedal. And I think it cost me like maybe $15 all in. The only other thing that I'm gonna do to this pedal is I'm gonna go buy some grip tape, like off of a skateboard, and I'm gonna put grip tape on the bottom of these, and then they'll be done. I'm one of those guys that loves to go on YouTube, much like yourselves, and look at how people repair things, do things, and then I take those projects on, because a lot of the times I feel like, hey man, if you out there can do it, so can I. In most of the cases, it works out. Right now I have 1, 2, 3 of these pedals, and once I get some parts for that last one, you know, the third one will be up and running completely. And if it takes, you know, 2 weeks, 3 months, whatever it takes, as long as it takes. The point is, it's a gratification that I restored something, I brought back something back to life that, you know, was just cast aside. This thing does a job. It does great. It doesn't squeak anymore. And some of the best and greatest albums were recorded using the old Squeak King over here, which in this case doesn't squeak anymore. Please like, subscribe, and share our videos with everybody else, okay?